when I got the call later that night, they're like, hey, so we're going to cast you as Jason. I was very professional. I was like on the outside going, oh yeah, that sounds great. Oh, so when are we shooting? Okay, cool, we'll try. Inside, I was a 13-year-old cheerleading girl going, ah! Are you kidding me?
Please give a Silver Scream Con warm, chilling welcome to Sean S. Cunningham, Warrington Gillette, and Derek Mears. Double Jasons and Sean, the man responsible for it all. So we have to begin with you, Mr. Cunningham.
Well, thank you.
So I was having a conversation with this guy, Spencer, who maybe you've heard of, a little bit ago. And he and I were talking about, I mean, we all love lore, right? Some of the most exciting lore of this franchise is this whole idea going all the way back to it starting with a title. And you having the idea that Friday the 13th was just a great title for a movie. Who knows what it's going to be about? But this is just a great name for a film. Can you? First of all, and let me just tell you, who here is at your first horror convention? First, second,
Yeah.
This is like fresh meat here.
Welcome to your family.
Indeed. So yeah, tell us about this origin story of just having this great title and how that all turns into this whole thing.
Well, it was a long time ago, and I was trying to figure out how to stay busy, how to keep people working. And the movie that we had hoped was going to be very successful got optioned, but it got put on the shelf. And then it became, what can we shoot? And I said, let's make a scary movie. And earlier on, I'd made lists of titles, and there was a long list of titles, and on that list was Friday the 13th, and it was, if I had a movie called Friday the 13th, I could sell that, you know? And so we set out to raise money and try to make a movie called Friday the 13th before we even had a script. But people responded to the title, and a short time later, we were off in New Jersey, Camp Nobi Bosco, shooting what was expected to be, you know, a film that was going to get shot and maybe released in the spring, and we just move on to something else. But nobody had any clue or any idea that we were going to wind up with, well, being here 40 some odd years later. I mean, it's impossible. It's just impossible. But that, the short answer is no. Sometimes we do the right things for the wrong reasons, and this is one of those lucky things that happened, and for which I continue to be grateful.
And somewhere in that story was the ad that you took out, right? In the trades, that was like Friday the 13th, and what did it say?
Yeah, it was. We were under a bunch of pressure, and I didn't know if I could use the title Friday the 13th.
There's no internet to do a trademark search.
No, and I didn't know enough about trademarks and copyright. But I figured if I took out a big ad in Variety, which is the trade newspaper, and it said, Friday the 13th, you know, coming soon, or something like the most terrifying film ever made. And with big block letters and a full-page ad, and I put it on Variety, and it was the beginning of July. It might have been the 4th of July. And I figured if somebody was going to object, I'd hear from a lawyer pretty soon, because it was going to get national distribution. And 2 weeks later, nobody had said a peep about it. But a lot of distributors said, "Oh, I'd love to get a look at that movie." And I said, "Okay, let's go." You know, and I figured, it was that silly. It was one of those times when, you know, you just benefit from not knowing what you don't know. And there's a long list of things that I didn't know at the time. So the other thing I would really mean sincerely is that all of you, one way or another, are connected to Friday the 13th and are fans of bigger or smaller fans of different things. But we are so grateful to have you continue to be fans and continue to enjoy it and make it possible for us to keep on going and keep, trying to tell the story and have some fun. So thank you all very much.
And before we go forward in time a bit, staying back into that word was, it's this great title, and it's this kind of fake it till you make it and put it out there and see if anybody else owns it and all of that. And as it's going and you're raising money and getting it together, when does this story start to develop that, of course, drives the first film? And at what point was there any thought that there might be more?
Okay. We didn't have a story, but we had a premise. And my idea was that we would have a group of people in the style of, say, 10 Little Indians. A bunch of people get together for whatever reasons, and then they get knocked off or found missing or something. So the question became, where? And there was going to be at a school, at a hospital, an insane asylum, and then somehow or other we came up with, how about a summer camp? And at that point it was like the middle of July, and we said, well, there are a lot of summer camps around, and they're all closing up at the end of the summer, so maybe we could get a camp and do it there. And it seemed simple enough to get that together, and we almost immediately started casting and trying to figure out who was going to be interesting to look at and what could we do. But it didn't really have a conventional story. The only thing that drove it was who's doing all this shit, and we had no plans remotely, to do another one until it opened, and it was, oh my goodness, yeah, we should. The distributors wanted more almost immediately, and it went on. It continues to go on, but we're very, very fortunate.
And it's easy to take for granted now, with the benefit of hindsight and all the decades that have followed, a lot of things that became tropes or became conventions of these franchises that you were pioneering at the time. I mean, there weren't many of these films. You could name them all.
Yeah.
You could count them all on a hand or two. That at the time you couldn't have possibly known, right, that you were setting the stage for so much.
What happened is that Friday the 13th was so successful initially, people said, well, he killed 10 people. We'll kill 20 people. It will be twice as good. And the truth is that, looking back at Friday the 13th, I made a whole bunch of story choices and mistakes that, if I were to start all over again today, I would do it differently. But so many of the mistakes that I made became memorialized because, well, they did it in Friday the 13th, and that really worked, so we'll do it again, and do it again, and do it again. And it's ultimately, I think it's always going to be story, 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 and you have the story that's engaging and pulls you in and gives you a ride, and gives you highs and lows. You say, all right, that was good. I like that. And if you're really lucky, you come away from the movie feeling that you had a good ride and you had fun. That would be the goal. I had a good ride and then I threw up. Not so much, But think of it like a roller coaster ride. You go down it and you get scared, all this happens, and then the roller coaster comes to a stop and everybody get out and they're laughing and punching each other and decide you're going to go see it again or do another ride. And I'm not going to, and that interaction is kind of what you hope to get when people are leaving the theater.
And one of the things that always comes to mind about that first film and getting into the second film is, when you think about the Friday the 13th franchise and some of the things that are so identifiable as the iconography of just Jason himself and, of course, the hockey mask, we're still a couple films away from really getting to those things, and that how the first movie exists as its own funnily enough, as it's thought of as like the archetype for these long franchises, it really exists as its own standalone film and tells a complete story from beginning to end. And of course, Jason's not really the killer in the first movie. So we've had the great spoiler alert for this 40-something-year-old movie. We've had the great Ari Lehman participate in Silver Screen Con. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to be here today for this panel, but he's told the story about being given the direction when he's coming up out of the water to actually really scare the crap out of the actress in the boat. What do you remember about that from your side of it?
Well, first of all, we were making this pretty much reality-based story about kids being threatened in the woods, but there's no monsters, no boogeymen, none of that stuff is in it. And then finally at the end we said, what if we had Jason come up out of the lake? And the first thing I said was, you gotta be fucking kidding me. What has that got to do with any, but nevertheless there was a precedent with a Brian De Palma film called Carrie, and then I recollect that the hand came out of the grave, which made no sense at all, but it was a terrific moment. They said, well, maybe we could build a moment like that and see what would happen. But I didn't have a whole bunch of confidence that the pieces would all come together. And Tom Savini, who was doing the special effects for us, he got really enthused about it. And, he starts working on it. And sometime around the end of September, I said, okay, we'll shoot it. And if it works, great. If it doesn't work, we'll end it the way we planned to end it. And and now I'm looking around for somebody to be in it. And I said, well, I've got a 10-year-old son. He can play it. And I said, okay, so that he was cast. And within a few days later, his mother finds out that I've cast him. He says, no son of mine is going to go in a lake in the middle of the autumn and freeze to death. What are you, crazy? And so suddenly I had to find somebody else that would be willing to do it. It turned out to be Ari Lehman, who had been in a film with us earlier, a film about kids playing soccer. And he was, I don't know, maybe he was 11 or 12. But, and he said, oh, sure, I'll do it. And he did. And it was about as low budget as you could possibly imagine shooting a scene like that, because he was underwater in the lake holding his breath, right? And we're waiting for the waves to go down, and then at some point we'd go 1, 2, 3. Everybody would. I think we yelled. First we were going to have a string to pull on, but we decided yelling would be more effective. And then he would hear it and come up out of it. And the first time we shot it, for whatever reasons, it didn't work. Now, if you were making a regular movie, you'd say, okay, reset. And you go back and you change the costumes and everything and you do it again. We didn't have more costumes. Everybody was soaking wet. Didn't have a duplicate makeup. So we came back the next weekend. And having looked at the footage and decided, well, we could do better here, we could do better there. And try to make the backgrounds were really beautiful. The leaves were changing color. So we wanted to keep all of that feeling there. And as luck would have it, we shot it, and then Harry Manfredini got the music just right. And I found a way to shoot a scene that follows that scene. Most people think the movie ends there at some point, it more or less does, but then you really cut away to the hospital, and there's Alice, who is the heroine, and we find out, no, she's okay. And she thinks maybe she had a bad dream, but maybe she didn't. What was that? And that sort of became the end. And as it turned out, it was just perfect timing with dumb luck, and we're very grateful to this day.
So iconic, and we are very grateful for it. Now, Warrington, I want to kick it down your direction. I thought you were like, this ain't for me.
No, I'm fucking leaving. Fuck this. Warrington? Fuck this. No.
Yeah, calm down, young man. You're next.
Yeah, we're getting to you.
The biggest for the best.
See, Warrington, this is called a bit. I wanted my water. I really don't dislike you. I was doing a thing, so it's not real what's happening right now.
Okay, all right.
Okay,
Don't
your
spoil
question.
the illusion.
Back to the show.
We're living the dream, that's all. Is this real?
So yeah, we're all still wondering. So Warrington, what was your introduction to this whole franchise? And had you seen the original before the opportunity came?
I had a date night, and I happened to see the beginning. I go, I can't believe this. You know, I wasn't really a horror buff at the time, but date night, and I'm watching the first Friday 13th. And yeah, everybody's shocked, yes. Then time goes by. I had no idea that I would later become part of the brand, and had no idea, obviously, it would create a span of 45 years leading up to celebrating Friday 13th. But to answer your original question, I don't want to migrate. I was just in New York going to school in Strasbourg. Then you go through the process. You're beating feet. You got your picture, your 8x10 resume, and you're trying to find a job, any goddamn job, right? And then the agent goes, oh, well, we got a movie. And this is odd because the agent says, oh, we're going to submit you for a movie called Jason. I go, huh? So I breezed by the office. They gave me the script, and it had emboldened in gold on the front face of it, Jason. I didn't really know what the hell it was. They weren't, my time, they weren't calling it Friday 13, Part 2. I don't know what happened, but I suppose then they had a meeting of the minds, and Frank Mancuso and the gang and Steve Miner, they go, we're going to call this Friday 13 Part 2. So so then you go through the process, you go in, you think you're going to get some great role. I was originally submitted for John Fury's role. Oh, the counselor at camp, and he got the campers, and all hell's going to break loose. Okay, good. Well, I don't know. They end up taking him, which is great. That's fine. Liked him better. And they said to me, well, you want to be Jason? I go, oh, yeah, great. Now, I was young. I still am young. But you had no idea back then. They're going to ask you, oh, have you done a lot of stunt work? Oh, yeah, of course I've done a lot of stunt work.
Fake it till you make it.
I've been in L.A., been to Hollywood Stuntman Association. Oh, of course. Well, have you done stair falls? Oh, of course. Have you jumped through windows and stuff? Oh, many times. Yeah. Yeah. Well, what is a 20-year-old kid going to say? 20, and you're like, hello. Yeah. I'm very good at that. Yeah. Anyhow, so the show goes on. Yes, you'll be Jason. We'll shave your head, and we're going up to Kent, Connecticut, and the job called for a 1-month shoot. Okay, I'm there. I'm ready. Yeah, whatever you want to. And it was fun. I looked at it like I was a kid. We were kids. We were campers, or whatever the hell we were. You know, I look back on it, it does feel like, I mentioned you earlier, several lifetimes ago. Go back in your own life 30 years. God, you know. People ask me, well, when did the movie come out? I don't know. I think it came out in the 90s. I'm not sure. It's painful for me to say, oh, it come out in, what year? 81? 82? Oh, 82. What? Well, I don't know how that happened because I'm born in 95. No.
Yeah, it's quantum physics.
I don't know. I just can't believe the journey, and happy Friday 13th to everybody here.
Yeah.
I mean, if it wasn't for you all, we wouldn't be here, and this thing wouldn't be rolling for this amount of time.
And isn't it fun to think about the idea that second film could have been called Jason? Because again, we take it for granted now that when you hear Jason, 99 out of 100 people are going to think of Jason Voorhees, but not back then. And even making that first film, his name almost wasn't even Jason. right?
I think Steve Miner had to get involved, or somebody then with Mancuso and the powers that were running the thing said, okay, we're going to call it Friday 13 Part 2. Okay. And now we're going to shift the whole impetus of the story. Mommy's killing first, and now Jason's killing for Mommy. It's like a whole role reversal. Oh, okay. And he's going to be a sympathetic vigilante, which I love that premise. He's a likable killer. It's great, and you're rooting for him, right?
I mean, that's really when the franchise, but just those films in general, I think, took the turn to where Jason kind of becomes the protagonist of, the horror films at one point were like, here's our stars, and then there's this killer that's after them. And really the Friday the 13th franchise is where it's like, well, we want to watch Jason kill everyone.
People love the character and they haven't even seen it. Children come up and then they go, I love you, love you, love you. Then you look at the parent. Well, has the child seen this? No, but he loves you anyway. Now, what piece of art, what musician are you going to love if you haven't heard their music? What actor are you going to love if you haven't seen it yet, but you still love it? Because that's the spirit, that's this sympathetic vigilante that got created over the span of time that led up to this little guy here.
I want to ask you before we jump in, just one more question about the second film, which was coming up with the look and even the physicality of that role, the mannerisms, the walk, everything about the appearance, the costuming. What do you remember about that process? About some of the choices that were made and the happy accidents? And
they were definitely filming several people walking through the woods. Now, come on, Carl Fullerton, this, Steve Miner, this. I mean, you're just have this insane walk, your possessed walk, how a possessed person would walk. It's a crazy, maniacal, highly motivated walk. And you've lost it. You've become a psycho. It's the psycho walk. Ask me.
Does it blow your mind to see now, because we think so much of Jason's look with the hockey mask, when you see now that there are action figures and representations of the look from 2, because that's a thing now. I mean,
I'm shocked about it. I'm shocked at all the toys that are made and the recreation of that face. That face, we didn't really know about the face. They put a lot of weight in Carl Fullerton because they just said to him, hey, do your thing. They didn't really know. And he's like, oh, okay. They send me to a dentist, and they tell the dentist, give him the most horrible malformities you could even come up with. Then cast his mouth, create the dentures, and then put it in his mouth. And we don't care how long he has to wear it. Well, intentionally try to screw your jaw up and walk around for 24 hours and see what happens. Your face gets out of joint quickly. Anyway, so then here's Carl. He's spending 8 hours trying to experiment. Oh, we got to close your eye off. Well, how do you do that? Well, no, I've never had an eye closed. Oh, we got to tape it shut. What? Go ahead and lose an eye. I feel so sorry for people that are in that position. But close an eye, you lose all your depth perception. You don't know how close you are, particularly to an oncoming stunt, because you need both eyes to calculate things. Anyway, so it's a mess. And so that eye's closed off, and he's going to spend the next 7 hours, as you're aware of, gluing prosthetics on your face. Now, if you've never done it before, it's all coming new and different and shocking. No?
Derek?
Derek? Prosthetics? Do you know anything about
That's a great segue.
Hello.
Another point. I mean, it's sort of a family at this point between all of you, right? Of that, between Ken and of course Kane Hodder and Ari, and I mean, the different actors and performers who have embodied this iconic character. It's like a little unholy fraternity of sorts.
For some of us. I'm joking, joking. No, it is. It's a weird brotherhood in a sense. We all get along, but also that brother sense that some people you want to murder. But also you're like, oh, that's how they are. That's cool. We all get along well.
So what was your introduction into this? I mean, you, of course, had the benefit of this was an existing icon that you're stepping into the boots of. How did you get involved in this whole journey?
My involvement came about where growing up, it's so wild also to be here. I always say I'm a fan representing the fans because the two things that gave me nightmares as a child were Jason Voorhees and an old TV show called $6 Million Man, where Andre the Giant played the Bigfoot and scared the absolute piss out of me. So I had so many nightmares, and it was kind of that taboo of like, oh, I'm not supposed to like this, but I like this. So loving the character, years later becoming an actor for a profession, when I heard that they're going to do a new Friday the 13th and do a reboot, I've never tried to pursue a role my entire life. And I knew that K&B might possibly be involved because of their prior experience with Platinum Dunes, who produced the reboot that in 09 that I did.
K&B Productions we're talking about, yeah?
Yeah,
with XL.
Greg
So those of you who don't know, that's...
Howard Berger.
Yeah, sure.
And so I was filming a Resident Evil thing in Japan at the time, and I called up over at K&B, and I go, hey, I'm not asking for favors. I don't ride anybody's coattails for career. I go, I love this character, and I would like to, if there's an audition, do you have any information about an audition? And I'm assuming like hundreds and hundreds of people would audition. Long story short, when I came back, they're like, look, we're not doing it. Scott's daughter's going to do it. Call Scott. And I knew Scott, the makeup artist from other projects that we had worked on together. And I called Scott up, and I go, hey, again, not riding coattails. I just want an audition if that's possible. I think I might be right for this. And I go, is there anything I know it's a couple months away. I want to start pre-training now. And I go, I'm assuming he's going to be like the bulky versions. Like for my career, I either bulk up or slim down for the physical roles. And he goes, actually, a lot of the concept designs look just like you. And I go, he's more of they're changing the character where he's more of a survivalist, but so he's leaner. And I'm like, oh, okay. But a lot of people, I've never really talked about it before. I started training then. I was still 6 months before even casting or knowing what was going on. I was like, I would wake up and go, this is what I'm doing. And I go, do you want this? And so I would do different simulations of like heavy bags, like carrying bodies and flipping. My background was fighting. And so I would just train. So the crazy version was, I get a call. The reason I got cast, what I was told, please correct me if anybody knows the difference, but the producers said, I thought there'd be hundreds and hundreds of people auditioning, and there's only 2 of us. And I go, afterwards, I go, how did you cast me? How did this happen? And they go, we asked a bunch of different industry professionals because they needed someone who could, this time around, they made the character an actual character, because before he was more of an essence or a presence. Sure. And so they wanted someone who could pull off the makeup, pull off the stunts, and pull off the acting. And my name kept popping up in all these different circles, and I was beyond flattered. So I went in and met with the casting director, and she goes, look, I don't know how to audition you. The character is silent, and I don't know what to do. She goes, this time around they said they want like an actual actor because it's more of an acting role, so there's arcs. Maybe that. Why do you think we need this? Why do we need an actor? And I go, look, I'm a huge fan of the series, and we all approach acting differently. And I go, if it's a silent character, language is only 10% of communication. So if I approach a script and the character doesn't have any dialogue, I break it down like any other script. So you find your arcs, you find your beats, and you develop your character in a lot of details that a lot of people will never ever see, but it's just for myself personally. So you have to trust that whatever's going on in the scene, as long as you're committing sincerely, that energy is going to transfer through the mask that's captured on camera. I go, I'm not a body actor, I'm not a mask actor, I'm not going to show you, how I'm feeling, because that's indicating. And I go, I'll feel it. And I started talking about like Greek mass theory and getting into theater, going, oh, like Greek mass theory, that the actor's one entity, the mass is like, they come together, and they're like, you might be overqualified for this.
You sound overqualified.
I'm a giant nerd. But then that night, it blew my mind, because I had initially entered, I did my first horror convention in 2007 for Hills Have Eyes 2, and I was blown away by the community and how cool everything was. I'm like, what is going on? Like, I found my people. So earlier when you're like, hey, it's my first con, that's why I'm like, hey man, welcome to your family. Yeah. Because this fandom is unlike any other fandom. I don't know, it's because we felt like we're outcasts or not accepted. Everyone is so accepting and loving, it's beautiful. So when I got the opportunity, when I got the call later that night, they're like, hey, so we're gonna cast you as Jason. I was very professional. I was like on the outside going, oh yeah, that sounds great. Oh, so when are we shooting? Okay, cool, we'll try. Inside, I was a 13-year-old cheerleading girl going, ah! Are you kidding me? And when the phone hung up, I hung up the phone. I remember sitting on my stairs and just quiet, looking straight ahead and went, my life is going to change. And I was beyond thrilled to be a part of any second of the film, and the cast and crew were beyond kind, and the cast, we're still friends to this day. A lot of them, horror on their resume is very small. They have since blown up. They haven't changed whatsoever. They don't have attitudes. They are the kindest, most cool people. So I'm very proud for what we do, and I'm also very proud, to be the part of the people that I grew up watching and call them friends. It's very surreal. So going to these cons in between TV and film jobs is such a huge thing for me because I get to experience, signing's one thing, but interacting with fans who are basically your different version of myself, and seeing that people could come over to me and tell me stories about the other films or about other people they've met. It's a family and it feels so good. So thank you for allowing me to receive that, because it's all about kindness, and everyone is beyond kind, and I'm just mirroring back what you're giving me, so thank you for the opportunity.
Well said. That's the spirit of Silver Scream Con right there. Thank you. I'm going to open it up to questions, but before I do that, I'm going to ask something that I know half of you are probably going to ask, and I certainly want to know, in that spirit of fandom. Whether it's gaming, whether it's graphic novels, there's all the different mediums to tell these stories about this great character. Sean?
Yes.
Can you tell us anything about where there's also always rights issues and things move around and so on and so forth. Where are things with Jason Voorhees and the Friday the 13th franchise? Can we look forward to something?
No.
That is the best.
Well, I asked you guys.
No, that's actually a true answer, but the layers are there are lots of layers, and they're compounded by the fact that some time ago the rights expired on the original script, and so there became a doubt about who owns what after 35 years or something like that, 37 years. And that was, being worked out by lawyers, and we're trying to figure out what we were going to do, and tried to do a TV series, which we actually got pretty far down the road. I was very happy with that. I thought it was going to be a lot of fun, and then the rights thing blew up, and the TV series got postponed, and the pandemic arrived, and then finally A24 decided that they would hook up with Peacock and do a Friday the 13th TV series, but they were going to hire Brian Singer to Brian Singer's another.
Brian Singer's no longer with us, so to speak.
And he's a very good writer, and so in the world of television, the show writer, the main writer, showrunner, is the star. That's the person you have to have complete faith in, because it's not the ability to write one story, it's to be able to write and tell a new story every week or every 2 weeks. And that's very, very hard, and very few people can do it. Anyway, he got the job, and it was green-lit. And he did writing during the pandemic and came out of it and had several scripts. And he was going forward and started to set up the writing room. And they didn't like the way the road he was going down. They felt it was going to be too dark. And so they abandoned it and then hired another pair of writers who, the last I heard, they're talking about shooting it in Australia at the end of this year, beginning the end of this year, and releasing it on Halloween 2025. but I have heard that story, versions of that story for so long. I don't put a lot of credibility into it because there are just so many things that can go sideways on it. I think that there's always seems to be the desire to have another Friday the 13th movie, which would have a distinct life from the TV series, and for sure, Jason's going to show up in more video games. And we had a really nice run with the first video game, and there's more to come in that world. So I wish I could tell you that. We're starting shooting in 2 weeks, and I'm going to have dueling Jasons. It's going to
Jason versus Jason.
Yeah.
Multi-person.
Yeah, multi-person. Yeah.
I wanted to tell you just something, because when we had to make Friday the 13th Part 2, it was like, what the hell are you going to do? And we said, well, we could bring back Alice, and she's being stalked by a killer. Well, who's the killer? What's the deal? And, well, it's Jason. And it was like, it's who? You're talking about this creature that came out of the lake, and he's supposed to be 12 years old. What happens? And we really just didn't know how we were going to do it, but that was going to be at least the label, and we wanted to, keep him hidden by and large. And as the movie went forward, we realized that we were trying to deal with a boogeyman, and that it's much better with a boogeyman to have a mask so that he becomes kind of human, but you don't really identify with this sort of dreamlike creature. And I don't know if it was Steve or not, but we said, well, we can we can use a potato sack that would hide his face, and so that the whole jump from he could be at the bottom of the lake to he was somebody's imagination to a fully grown serial killer with resentments and a potato sack happened, and against all odds, it was quite successful. And Steve wanted to do a 3D movie, so he decided to do Friday the 13th Part 3, and he had been making his living part-time working for the NFL. I'm sorry, with the NHL, the hockey league. And he was shooting 16mm films and cutting them together. So he saw all those masks that the goalies wear, and they had them all decorated. And he said, well, get rid of the potato sack and we use a hockey mask. And without any further explanation, it just landed. And we didn't know if people were just going to laugh at it or not. And it just became accepted. And Jason was morphing into this, kind of vigilante character. And he had, so completely changed from the original notion. He's still a boogeyman with attitude, that's for sure. But
I love that phrase, boogeyman with attitude is the best. It's so good.
And I would argue that the mask now is more identified with Jason than with hockey.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And Betsy Palmer. I went through casting, and Betsy Palmer was famous at the time for daytime television. She did something called Today Show. She was a trusted person inside your living room in the mornings. And we had offered her the script to read, and her agent said, would you do it? And they had it back and forth, and she says, well, tell me. She read it, and she says, this seems like it's going to be a very low-budget film. And she said, yeah, and there really wasn't much money. And her car had just died. And so she needed enough money to buy a new car. And if she got enough money to buy a new car, she was going to do the movie. And in the course of that discussion, she told me later with her agent, aren't you worried about how it might turn out? And she says, oh, it's a low-budget movie. Nobody's ever going to see it anyway. So she wound up becoming Pamela Voorhees to buy a new car, and it's one of those happy coincidences.
Amazing. All right, so we're going to take some questions here in the next few minutes. Yes, put up your hand. I will call on you. And if you could stand up, tell us your name, where you're from, and keep it to a single question because we have a packed room. And I believe your hand maybe went up first. In the yellow shirt, yeah. Camp Crystal Lake shirt.
He's never seen waves like that in the lake. How was that accomplished?
Threw a rock in the lake.
Threw a rock in the lake, if you didn't hear that. That was practical effects, low-budget filmmaking. Yes, right here.
They're fighting.
I was pointing to you, but that's okay.
We have the same question, honestly.
Go for it. Well, who are you, first of all? Name and where you're from.
I'm Rosie. We're from Worcester, sort of.
Ah.
We want to know what people's favorite kills are.
Ooh. Favorite kills from the franchise? That is a question for each of you.
I'll go. No, I'm a nerd. It's the cliche where I love the sleeping bag kill, the slam hotter against a tree. So good.
That's definitely one of my go-to GIFs. I use that GIF a lot in texting. Yeah, for sure. Favorite kill?
In the whole franchise, that's a lot of kill scenes. For me personally, it has to be something that I lived through. Kind of like, so that would be of the group of my favorites. But I'd have to say the wheelchair, the poor murderer.
Yeah, so good.
And I like Tom McBride, so that hit me hard when that thing happened. I mean, rest in peace, Tom. And Lord, I think the couple in the bed is quite a impaling moment. Like I'd kind of being there and seeing how it was created, and that hit me pretty hard. So I have to go with the sex scene and the wheelchair. I don't know. And I am writing a fabulous novel. It's going to be a screenplay. So now I've lived through it. So now I've been writing it myself, trying to create myself the most dramatic kill scenes. And it's not so easy to create them. Anyhow, so it's been quite a journey.
Mr. Cunningham.
Well, I think technically the craziest was the dry ice scene. That was
What scene?
Dry ice gets an extra dry person.
and that was just like what, and it just worked, and it just worked so well, and I was actually proud of the Kevin Bacon and Janine Taylor, mostly because it was kind of a magic trick, and you're trying to get the audience to be looking one way, and then you came back at another. I mean, it was just mechanically very, very difficult, and Tom Savini did such a great job making it work. I really like that.
The first one I saw was actually 3D, and I mean, just the harpoon coming right at your face. That's a favorite for me. We have time for a couple more questions. Yes, this Chucky doll right here. Wait, what's your name and where are you from?
Is there a wire mic I can bring out to?
Sorry, if you can speak up just a little. We don't have a wireless mic. We should have gotten one.
How did you land on Camp Building Moscow as the shooting location for Camp Crystal Lake?
How did you choose that particular camp to be Camp Crystal Lake?
They were the first ones that said yes.
Yeah, that's funny.
Makes sense.
And then how do we get to Kent, Connecticut from there?
Yeah.
They then said no, and then we went to a boarding school.
Yeah. Yeah, when we left Camp Novi Bosco, there was a Boy Scout camp, and we'd made this horror film in a Boy Scout camp, and the Boy Scout camp didn't like that association because they were trying to breed Eagle Scouts, not serial killers. And so the idea of going back to Camp Novi Bosco anytime in the near future was off the table. So we lived in Connecticut, and Kent wasn't far, and that just popped up on the radar.
And a perfect location. Yeah.
Couple more hands. Let's go. I see way back here. Ever a kill scene that you wanted to do that you weren't able to do for some reason? I think that was the question, yeah?
No?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
of course, but you go ahead.
Yes, there was.
Go ahead, killer.
In the reboot, the original script, Willa Ford's death was different. It actually was my favorite kill in the film before they changed it, but I understand why they changed it. Originally, what had happened, as scripted, they do the water skiing sequence. Jason takes out Ryan's character with the arrow. Boat hits Willa. She's dazed in the water. And as it's written, she's dazed and she like, oh my God, like what's going on? She looks over and she everything's blurry. She sees like a guy standing on the side of the lake. She's like, oh my God, help me. And she starts to like kind of come towards him. And the guy, which is Jason, walks forward and just stands there at the edge of the lake. And she's like, what? Are you? Hello? Are you? And she's like, she gets scared and starts to swim sideways, parallel. He turns and walks with her, staring at her the entire time. She stops, he stops, turns to her, puts his machete in the sand and stares at her. And she's like, what do you want? Like, what do you want? Then they cut to the kids in the cabin partying and it's starting to get, it's starting to get a little bit dark. It's not dark yet. It's still daytime. They cut to the kids sequence where they're partying and having crazy bitches, setting other stuff up. When we cut back to the scene, it's now evening or night. She's still treading water and she's afraid to get out. Jason hasn't moved an inch. He's still staring at her and she eventually fatigues out and sinks and dies. And it's more of a psychological kill. And the reason they recently wanted to change it, they go, we love the kill, we think it's so cool, but we need a jump scare. We need something because we're making an event movie where people get that and get that scared, and seeing her just sink, it just bums everybody out. Or I'm like, okay, I get it. But I love that idea. I think I've only talked about that once. So yeah, great question.
Yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
like you said, psychological. It's a very cerebral
really
kill and comedic, I would say.
Yeah, for sure.
I think we can do two more questions if
Well,
they're.
I wanted to share one.
Oh, please.
My favorite unshot kill was going to be part of the TV series, and there's a setup for it. But basically, they're out on the ice, and a bunch of little kids are playing pee-wee hockey. 8, 9 years old. They're skating down. One kid does a breakaway, skates down, and who's in the net but Jason, right? And comes up and he tries to shoot it. Jason blocks it once, and the kid who's trailing scores the goal. They go, yay! And Jason is pissed. And he starts chopping at the kids and at the ice, which starts to crack, and then we cut out of it. But it was anyway. It wasn't meant to be. What the explanation would be that the kids in the high school had shot this film, and it was a joke, and it was going viral on the internet. And that was, but I thought it was so silly and so much fun. I wish we'd gotten a chance to shoot it.
Right here. Yes. The very end, yeah.
My name's Emily. I'm from Connecticut, and my question is, if you were in a film that never from the movies, would it be a
I guess sort of your dream story idea for if you could carte blanche to make another Friday the 13th film, what would your premise be?
I will not tell you.
Which studio do you work for is, I think, what they want to know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, come on.
How much money
Easy,
do you
Warner
have?
Brothers. Nice try. No, I personally, I sit on mine. Like, I just did a big interview for a big magazine that's coming out, and they asked me the similar thing. I started to type the answer, and I went, no. Because that's a possibility. Like, I'm a nerd, and I'm like, I got something for you.
And
Sean, I have a pitch. I'm not going to tell you.
I'm going to guess it's the same answer from all three of you, right? Which is, can't say.
You're asking.
I mean, you
me
got
the
one.
same question?
Yeah.
What would you do for a new Friday? What would your premise be?
It's a continuing in the theme of Friday the 13th. I don't know. I'd turn him into like a love story. So I'm always thinking on the more passionate level of life. So we could shift gears and he could try a whole new journey. And he could fall in love, and then there could be a protagonist, antagonist, and then something could happen to his love interest, and then that puts him in a whole nother level, because that could be the first time he fell in love. You ride him, Jason.
Ride of Jason, yeah. Jason in Love. Friday, I'm in Love. I think that title's...
Friday in Love.
Cheers, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you, Derek. Okay, let's do seriously one more, and only because we've been making eye contact. Favorite visual effect? Across the franchise, or just... Okay, sure. Yeah.
Most of ours were practical, so I don't have a visual effect one. I don't know.
Practical also counts in the question, okay.
In my time, it was shot in film, so there was no real CGI and all that. So what we were doing, and then we didn't know because there was no way to replay it on a digital screen next to us. So I would say shocking all the work with the clotted blood and the loose blood, and then trying to function with one eye, and then some monumental stunts that occurred with that, with the blood and the smashing through glass. I mean that will leave an impact on you the rest of your life. No, and that was the real deal. That wasn't like an effect.
Derek? No, I was just trying to play along. I did not really, because mine is Sean's answer for best kill is the nitrogen in part Jason X, and the face gets smashed. The effects scene that shot for that, the sculpt is fucking beautiful, incredibly beautiful.
Mr. Cunningham, do you have a favorite visual effects shot or practical effects?
No. I mean, it's.
He loves them all.
He loves them
I
all.
love them. Yeah, I love them all
his children.
equally. They're like children to me.
I have a question for Mr. Cunningham. Out of all the Friday the 13th series, which movie is the one that you like the most? Mine's part 4. What do you like?
Mine's part 2. What do you like? One got it going, but 2 was the real deal.
I'm really torn between 2 and 4.
Somebody's in Hollywood. I love it.
I got to say that my favorite visual effect as a diehard Fred head is in Jason Goes to Hell when the glove comes up out of the ground and grabs the hockey mask.
Yeah.
Freddy fans in here, I know it's a Freddy panel. Well, thank you everyone for making this a glorious Friday the 13th packed panel on Silver Scream Con 3 Day 1. Look at you all. In the big DCU with the windows, we got the public outside our walls. And Derek, I got to thank you one more time for such a great, succinct, beautifully articulated poem about what this whole community is and why we're all here, man. It's awesome. And of course, Mr. Cunningham, thank you for your contribution to this whole culture and all this stuff we love. Warrington, can't thank all three of you enough.
Also, thank you, my friend, for being a terrific host.
This is John Glover, and you are watching Fandom Spotlight. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Lionel Luther recommends it. Have some fun. Follow your fandom.